You're listening to the Marketing Happy Hour podcast, where we discuss career and industry insights with our peers in marketing.
We're here to talk about it all, like the ups and downs of working in social media,
how to build authentic relationships in the influencer and PR space,
managing a 9-to-5 and a side hustle at the same time,
how to be productive in your life and career without losing your sanity, and more.
Ultimately, we're here to build a community with you because we're all trying to navigate the world of marketing together.
Are you ready? Grab your favorite drink and join your hosts, Cassie and Erica, for this week's episode.
All right, so today I am super stoked and honored to have Nyjah, the global social media lead for Uber, which I am an avid Uber user. And so just super excited to dive into kind of the behind the scenes here. Nyjah has 12 years of experience across industries. And so I think she's going to bring the insights and just strategies for social that I feel like you could probably associate or use for really any industry. And so super excited to dive in. Nyjah, welcome to Marketing Happy Hour. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to chat with you.
Yes, absolutely. Well, as always, I have to ask first, what's been in your glass lately? What do you enjoy sipping on recently?
Okay, I am a chai latte kind of girl.
Yeah.
I started doing this thing. I have two missions right now, two little side quests in my personal life. It's to try as many chai lattes around New York City as possible and rank
Okay.
them personally. But then also I'm doing the same thing with Branzino. I'm trying to go to
Ooh.
different restaurants and try their Branzinos and then rank them.
Oh
So
my
currently in
gosh.
my cup is a chai latte, but it's part of a broader mission of finding the best chai lattes around New York City.
Wow. Okay. Okay. Wait. So I used to live in New York City. I have to know what's your number one ranking right now, if
Oh
you
my
have
gosh,
one.
I do. Let me pull up my list.
I
Okay,
love
now
this.
I haven't been to many, many places. Right now, I have 11 spots on the list,
It's
and
pretty
I'm
good.
trying to go to places that aren't, your standard, coffee shops that
Sure.
everyone goes to and things of that nature. So right now, there are three places that have the number one spot, and
Mm-hmm.
they're all in Brooklyn, surprisingly.
Ooh.
So the first one is Lips Cafe.
Mm-hmm.
That one is in, I believe it's in Flatbush. Then there's another place, I think it's in Bed-Stuy, called Milk and Pull. And
Mm-hmm.
my third place is a vegan cafe called Familiars. And I believe
Mm-hmm.
that one is also maybe in Bed-Stuy. Um,
Oh.
but I should preface and say that I like my chai latte sweet, okay? I want
Oh.
to feel like I'm drinking syrup or, just I need something sweet. So if that's not your cup of tea, quite literally, I would not recommend any of those places.
Oh, wow. Okay. I'm gonna have to try that. I do love chai as well, and that sounds delicious. One of my favorite current shops in New York is Fellini Coffee. I don't know. Have you heard of Fellini? I think it's in Soho or West
I'm
Village
writing it
area.
down.
Okay.
I'm writing it down.
So I'm going to preface, I don't know if they have tried, to be honest. They probably do, I'm sure. But it is the cutest little cafe. I think it's Italian and everything, but it's adorable. So that's one spot to check out if you have not already. But I'm going to write down your chai spots too and try them next time I'm there. Thank you for that.
Of course. I have a list called chais to try. So
I love this. I think you should do like a whole blog. You should do it all and I'll
I
save it for my
know.
next trip.
I know people keep telling me that. And I'll do it one day. One day.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Absolutely. I'll look out for that for sure. Well, Nye, I'm so excited about this conversation. I'm just so impressed by your background and everything that you've done so far. So, just overall, let's talk about your journey a little bit. You've interned at a small production studio. You've done a number of things in between, leading you to the global social position at Uber. Just tell us a little bit about that journey and just some of those key moments that have defined your path in social.
Absolutely. I always tell people that this was not part of the plan. I did
Hmm.
not find, or I didn't think that I would land in marketing. It was just not something that was on my radar. I went to school and studied journalism and history, and I consider myself a historian. History has always been my favorite subject. I just love the stories. But when I think about it now, I was really planting the seeds for a career in marketing because
Mm-hmm.
how I view history is essentially the same story told from different perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's also the same case with marketing. So I kind of feel like I was primed for this industry, even though it wasn't the destination I had in mind. But I use that, love for storytelling to kind of build the career that I have now. So I stumbled into social just because I needed to get an internship to get that ball rolling, to get my credits so I can graduate.
Mm-hmm.
But then after that, I just kept getting more and more of the social media internships that eventually led to me interning at the UNC School of Health, as well as the Smithsonian Institution. So interning for very huge organizations.
Mm-hmm.
And those were very pivotal, I think, at such a time where social was pretty new, at least within the marketing scheme. People knew about Facebook and posting here and there, but this is before the other apps really became what they are today.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but having that background with such big names really allowed for me to land ultimately my first big agency role at laundry service. So I would say that was the second, I guess, big moment in my career. Landing that role was impactful for me just because laundry service at that time was leading the industry in terms of being a social media first agency.
Mm-hmm.
And at laundry service, I was on the Hennessy account. So being a part of this leading organization and having a legacy brand as my client really set me up for success in understanding just how to transition a more traditional marketing approach and a brand that favors that into the more digital space and being able to push and not being afraid to experiment and speak up and advocate for social. And those are things that I'm still having to do today, even in 2024, where everyone knows, or at least I like to think everyone knows, social plays a huge role within the marketing function. So
Yeah.
definitely laid that groundwork to have the voice that I have now. So I always attribute my time at laundry service for kind of building that true pillar for a social media lead.
Absolutely fantastic. I love that. And I loved seeing how your history background led you to that role at the Smithsonian. I think that's so cool. Um, just with tapping into your experience and everything that you've done leading up to where you are now, I'm just curious if there's any specific skills or things that you feel have allowed you to get a step ahead or to gain those opportunities, just because as marketing professionals or just professionals in general, we're always looking for ways to get ahead in our careers and just evolve and grow. So anything that you would say to that specifically?
Yeah, I would say two things. I want to shout out, I'm always going to shout out my experience in beauty, specifically my time at Milk Makeup,
Mm-hmm.
because it was the first startup that I worked at. And knowing that budgets are pretty non-existent with some startups, um, really learned how to create content that can be meaningful and impactful using a phone and not having the resources to have a full-fledged production. And this was maybe 2017, 2018. And now we're in 2024 and we're pushing to have, someone with a phone just on set for these major productions like Super Bowl spots.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely starting there was hugely important in setting up a foundation that I think everybody needs right now. Just being able to be scrappy, have a phone, and see opportunities for content, no matter if it's walking down the street or being a part of a full scale production. So I would definitely say that. And then I think generally it's probably something that kind of works my nerves just a little bit within the space. But there's a lot of conversation, or I've seen conversations around, a generalist versus a specialist. And people always say, when you're starting out in social or just I guess in marketing period, you should aim to be a generalist, but then grow into a specialty.
Mm-hmm.
So then people know, like, this is the person you go to for organic, this is the person you go to for paid, this is the person you go to for influencer, so on and so forth. And that definitely applies to skills and industries, but I think there's something to being a generalist throughout your whole career. And really embracing that. Yes, still have your specialty. So I'm a specialist, you would say, in organic social. And then even within that realm, I'm a copywriter. But I think having the mindset of being a generalist takes you out of that thinking of, I'm this, so I don't do that. Or I won't work in this industry, or I don't work in this industry. Being a generalist allows you to stay open, to continuously experiment, to find solutions within different pockets that you may not have considered. So I really encourage people to, remain open, keep a generalist mindset, but still have your specialty in growing in this field.
Ooh, I really like that a lot. That's very encouraging to me specifically, to be honest, just because I consider myself a generalist. Like I'm kind of tapping in these different industries. And a lot of times I'm like, do I need to be more specific? Do I need to really niche down and have one specific area? And I think overall, just being a generalist allows you to learn and grow. And down the road, if you want to specify, you can because you have that experience. So I think that's so great. So thank you for sharing that.
Of course, of course. It's been a very big factor in my career as well. So I can't ever say to someone, even if I'm hiring, I can't ever say like,
Mm-hmm.
well, you're doing this. You don't have this special, focus in
Mm-hmm.
this particular aspect, and therefore I can't bring you onto the team. That's not going to serve anyone. You need generalists. You need people who are it's similar to cultural savants. Like
Mm-hmm.
they just know everything, or you expect them to know different things about different pockets of the internet and different communities just because they are generalists. They are aware of overarching culture. And I feel
Right.
like the same thing applies to whatever role you're in and whatever industry you're in.
Yeah, yeah. And I think too, just overall, people with different perspectives, bringing them into a team, even if it's perspectives that aren't necessarily related directly to your industry or what you're doing, I think having external expertise is so important because it gives you that fresh, different perspective on building a marketing campaign or strategy overall. So, yeah, it's so good. I want to talk about organic social a little bit here. I think overall, we're still in marketing trying to figure out how organic social plays a part in our overall strategy. It's often underestimated just for direct impact. So, speaking to your milk makeup experience that you talked about a second ago, can you share a little bit about how you demonstrated the power of organic social, specifically driving 1.2 million in sales for the brand, which is absolutely incredible.
Yeah, it's my favorite accomplishment to this day. Shout out to Milk Makeup. But I think the issue I find people have with organic social is that it's not immediate.
Mm-hmm.
People want direct impact immediately, and that's just not how organic social works. It's a long game. You're building community. You're finding audiences or bringing new audiences into the community that you have already while also watering the community that you currently have. It's not something that can be done in a short amount of time, just because you have to build that connection first. And then once you have that connection, you're able to sway them. It's similar to any friendship, right? You put in the time and energy to build a relationship with your friends, and then you want to, given that time, you're able to give them advice and they're more inclined to listen to you because you've built that rapport and you've built that trust with them over time. That doesn't happen. I just met someone at a networking event and the very next day I'm telling them, hey, you need to go do this. They're going to be like, who are you?
Mm-hmm.
Just met you yesterday. So the
Yep.
same thing applies to organic. And a lot of people, a lot of marketers, they haven't fully embraced that, or they're resistant just because they're so focused on, the direct impact and having that happen so quickly and having it be so immediate. But what I find in all of my accomplishments, specifically this one with Milk Makeup, is that I built that community, I built that rapport. So then I was able to have them convert. And that took some time.
Mm-hmm.
But I also find with all the successes that I've had is that with that campaign in particular, it was for a Hydro Grip primer.
Mm-hmm.
And how that was set up is essentially the CMO at that time, she would create a task force for any go-to-market campaign. So someone from a different function within marketing would lead that campaign and then work with the different cross-functional partners to put it all together and then go to market with that product. So it just so happens when Hydro Grip Primer was launching that I was selected to be the task force lead for the go-to-market strategy. And that was the first time I really had the opportunity to kind of flip marketing on its head and have social lead this campaign versus having, other functions within the marketing department take that lead and then just kind of give us assets that may or may not work.
Mm-hmm.
So having social lead, you're literally allowing the people who know your audience best to create the content for them and then having that content spread across the different functions, whether that's through CRM and email, or if it's with packaging, if it's for the website, even in store. So having, imagery or content that we've produced for social channels actually live in Sephora stores. Just flipping it completely on its head, knowing that we're creating content with the consumer first, with our audience and our community top of mind. And in doing that, we were able to create videos, we were able to create photos, also take comments, take reactions from people, and weave that into the whole launch and spread that across the different functions and the different channels that we had at play. It also allowed us to tap creators and tap actual members of the community to be a part of our campaign. So Milk Makeup definitely prides itself on having more everyday people be a part of the campaigns versus, your standard beauty model or your standard beauty influencer, having them be a part of it. So it allows people to be a commentator within the community and find their way into a whole billboard, find their way onto the site. So again, having social lead in that aspect allowed us to overproduce content and overproduce content that directly resonates with the community that we want to ultimately buy this primer. And it worked. I mean, $1.2 million in first week sales. And that was a huge push between having, I can't believe IGTV at that time. Having an Instagram story strategy, making sure we have different videos that live on YouTube that shows, how to use the product, how to apply it, how to layer it. Working with the influencer team to pinpoint these people that we want to be a part of the campaign that aren't your stereotypical beauty influencers. Even building out the influencer trip at that time. What did that look like from a social perspective so that we're creating opportunities for the people on these trips to really highlight the product in the way that we want. So yeah, just several examples of flipping traditional marketing kind of on its head and just literally having social be at the helm. And I find that allows for a lot of success. That created the success for Milk Makeup. It also led the way for my time at laundry service when I was on the Hennessy account, went viral on Twitter by mimicking or imitating a behavior that we saw our consumers were exhibiting and recreating that, producing content that essentially led to a scholarship being created. And it's just being in tune with the people that you're trying to sway at the end of the day.
Yeah, yeah, that's so incredibly important just to know your audience on a deeper level. And as you mentioned, in social, we do so much of interaction with the consumer and talking to them and hearing from them. So I truly do agree that I think social has such an opportunity to lead those campaigns and create something that really does 100% resonate with the consumer. So that's awesome. Kudos to you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So trend wise, just looking forward to 2025, we're recording this at the end of 2024, thinking about what do we want to do next year on social. What trends do you see shaping the future of social media, and how are you preparing at Uber just to lead in this evolving space?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to sound like a pessimist, but or just contrarian, but I'm anticipating the meme bubble bursting. I'm
Mm,
anticipating the video bubble bursting. Memes work. I know
yeah.
that for a fact. And they work no matter the industry, no matter the brand. They work, and they work because it's an inside joke. It's
Hmm.
an inside joke that you either get or you don't get, but you want to be a part of it. So you'll find a way to figure it out.
Hmm.
That creates that engagement, that creates community, that creates opportunities to really then feed to your community the different offerings and products that you have, and get them on board with it. So like I totally understand and see the value. But I think the way the industry is moving is that more and more brands, and definitely more and more leaders within the marketing function, they want to have ownable content. They want to be able to say, this is Uber. And if anyone tries to replicate it, then people would still remember that Uber was the one who kind of led this creation, or led this pivot in some kind of way.
Hmm.
Um, so as more leaders push for that ownable content, I think memes are just gonna have a bubble burst at some point. And then people are going to try to figure out different ways to take that inside joke, that ethos of a meme, and find a way to create it in different other content formats and different types of content styles. So I anticipate that happening. And then the same thing applies to video. Videos are everywhere, and there's only so much video content that you can consume between the apps, as well as the streamers, as well as if you do watch cable or anything like that. It's just a lot. And I find that a lot of people are moving towards, I just want to be able to glance over something really quickly, get it, and move forward. So we're seeing that pivot back to photo. We're seeing that pivot back to more graphics with on-screen text, just something very simple and clean, so that people can keep moving, but be able to digest the message in a shorter way. So I feel like those are the trends I can see popping up in 2025, in the direction that, I see a lot of channels potentially moving in. So I'm just curious to see if I'm actually going to be right, or if I'm going to be completely wrong.
Oh, interesting. I haven't even thought about the meme situation. I could totally see that happening, but 1000% for video, I feel like we're already seeing how, especially on Instagram, like carousels are starting to become popular again. Images only. I'm really curious about the kind of consumer behavior behind that. Is it because people have less time and they don't have time to watch videos anymore? I don't know. So I'm so curious as well, to your point, to see how that plays out and if that kind of starts to shift here soon.
Yeah. I think it's also too, especially from a carousel perspective,
Hmm.
it allows for, and I'm going to speak in beauty terms, but it allows for immediate payoff.
Yeah,
You
I
don't
agree.
have to build the anticipation, or you don't have to set things up. It's just here, slide A, swipe, slide B, and then
Right.
you're able to easily scroll on and move on with the rest of your feed. And I just feel like a lot of people just want that information more quickly than what a
Hmm.
video tends to provide. And knowing the amount of production that goes into videos, sometimes you don't get to the message as quickly as people need you to.
Oh, that's a good point. I completely agree. So I'm right here with you. I'm excited to see what happens with that. But I want to talk a little bit about a couple series that you've done with Uber. So you did a 1 minute with and a What's in Your Bag series. How did you develop these concepts, and what impact have they had in terms of audience engagement?
Oh, for sure. So both of those series were essentially trends that had already existed, that we adapted and turned into, again, ownable. evergreen series that we use to highlight products and then highlight merchants as well. So for 1 Minute With, for example, it's a series that we do for both Uber and Uber Eats. But 1 Minute With is a cross between Carpool Karaoke and Vogue 73 Questions. Very successful series that people
Hmm.
tune into regularly. And then you have What's in Your Bag, which is essentially the grocery and convenience version of the fashion beauty essentials trend that, a lot of, I believe Vogue does it as well. Maybe I'm just like a Vogue stan secretly. Um, but a lot of publishers are doing. So it's seeing something that has already successfully stopped audiences mid-scroll and then replicating it to support, Uber's business priorities. I'm very much I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. We don't have enough time for that. So I'm that kind of marketer. And instead, I seek the opportunities to put my own spin on that wheel. And those series are just a reflection of that. And our community has been very receptive to them so far, especially 1 Minute With from the merchant's perspective. So I made the case for turning that Uber series into something that we do on Uber Eats as well, just so we can highlight local restaurants that deliver through our platform. And our community has been loving meeting the owners, hearing their stories, especially if it's like an older couple or like couples in business. People love to see that. And then just going in the kitchen with us to see how these popular dishes are made, or just if it's a unique dish that, isn't typically served at another restaurant, like what all goes into creating that. So for example, a recent reel that we did for a restaurant in LA called Mogu Mogu,
Hmm.
that outperformed our benchmarks for likes, views, shares, and reach by as much as 161%. It
Wow.
was just it went through the roof. Shout out to my teammate for finding that merchant and bringing them to the community. Shout out to her. But Mogu Mogu just had it was a ramen shop. They served noodles, and they had different styles and ways of serving noodles, and just highlighting its availability, letting people know that if you're not in walking distance in LA to go to this place, you can order through the Uber Eats app. People have really gravitated towards that because people want to try new things, or they're open to supporting local businesses and, not your everyday enterprises. Um,
Hmm.
so and I feel like the same kind of applies for what's in your bag in terms of the beauty behind it. It's like you take a celebrity, you take an influencer, and you want to know what essentials they're carrying on a day to day. So if it's this lip balm, if it's this perfume or something like that, you're just curious and you want to know what bag they're carrying and carrying that stuff in. And now, Uber Eats version of what's in your bag, it's a little grocery bag, so not too fancy there. But you want to know like what these celebrities or influencers or creators are cooking on a day to day. What are their favorite meals and what are they ordering in order to make them? So it's our version of letting people know this is what's in their grocery bag, letting you know these are the foods that they like to create and this is what they use to create them, and then building, more of a rapport, not only with that creator or influencer, but also with Uber Eats, knowing that they ordered through Uber Eats to get this and you can do the same thing.
Oh, I love that. And I love this idea too of just tapping into these trends that we're already seeing on our feeds. I was talking to Grace Tully at PayPal recently, and she talked about this idea of how brands aren't always showing up in the feed. So it's figuring out this way to make a brand feel more like a human regular account or just a person that you follow. And so I think that's kind of that idea of taking this trend, these things that just everyone on our feed is already doing, and using the brand perspective of that could help kind of with that growth hacking on the channel. So I think that's great.
1000%. And I love that she said that because that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
We're competing with cats. We're competing with Maxwell. That's the
Yep.
cat that's like tormenting everyone's
Yes.
cats in the streets. Like we're competing with Maxwell. I can't compete with a raging cat, you
Yep.
know? But you're trying to find content that feels right within people's feeds,
Hmm.
so that they will interact with it and engage with it, regardless if it's a brand post.
Yeah, yeah. And so I want to talk about influencers here for a minute. Whether or not you have a large budget, a limited budget, what strategies would you recommend for creating impactful campaigns with influencers?
I feel like some marketers want to just hand over a brief and moonlight as a project manager just to get the work over the finish line. But I find that collaborative storytelling is how I've created impact when working with creators or influencers, and that's regardless of the budget. And it's something that I've practiced again since my days at Milk Makeup. Like, Milk Makeup is pretty foundational, if that wasn't clear, throughout this podcast. But when I worked at Milk Makeup, it was still, this super young startup and not the force that it is now. So all I could offer creators at that time was essentially a small coin purse, a closet full of product, and the opportunity to co-direct. And that last bit, the chance to co-direct, is what made the content more meaningful and impactful because the creator was able to build the narrative with me. We did it together. So I always recommend that marketers and their leaders, be open to sharing the mic and finding creators who they're willing to get their hands dirty with. It's not just I build this brief, I give it to you, you make the thing happen. It's okay, here's what, is at stake. Here's what we're looking to do. How can we work together to make this narrative make sense, not only for Uber or whatever brand that I'm working for, and make sense for your audience and your community because we want them to know about what we're able to offer them. And just finding opportunities to really work alongside creators and again, sharing that mic, I feel like is the necessary step in order to create impactful work.
Love that. Love that. And we've talked a little bit about this idea of just experimentation and trying different things. How do you lead your team to experiment while still aligning with brand goals? I feel like a lot of times that is missing in leadership or even just in a team rapport, just having this encouragement to not be afraid to test and take risks and try new things. So, how are you leading your team to do that?
Yeah, so I don't want anyone to think within a framework or the confines of a business goal. I
Mm-hmm.
want every pie in the sky idea because that's how I ideate as well. I think big. I think as big as possible. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I want my team to share every pie in the sky idea as possible. And then I think it's my responsibility to connect those dots and make it make sense with the business goal in mind.
Mm-hmm.
So I provide the team I guess I should say like the get to buy format is something that I'm a big advocate for. Get, insert, target audience to do something, and then buy. How do you get them to do that thing?
Mm-hmm.
So I typically provide the team with the get and the to, and I let the pie in the sky idea lead the buy. So I'm encouraging them to see where their imagination can take them, knowing that we all live these very intricate, interconnected lives, and we connect with different people. We interact with different people. Our FYPs are, specifically curated for us. Taking all of that insight, give me your biggest ideas towards figuring out that getting to, and then we get the buy, and I make the dots make sense, and I connect them.
Oh, I love that framework so much. I think that's a really good thing that we can kind of take away, especially as we prepare to lead a team and just have team members behind us. Just implementing a framework like that that's easy to understand and easy for a team to articulate and pull together. So thank you for sharing that. I've never heard of that before. So that's really fun. That's something I'm going to keep handy for my future campaigns too.
Nice. Nice. Yeah. I was pretty new to it when I started at Uber. And that was nearly 4 years ago. But now I can't imagine not having that framework with
Mm-hmm.
ideating around different concepts as they ladder up to business goals. And it's also an easy way to sprinkle in the objectives and the goals and everything within that framework so that we're still operating alongside what, different teams had in mind for their campaigns and their launches.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Nye, I have to ask you one of my favorite questions to ask on the show. Just overall, thinking back to your career and life in general, what do you know now that you wish you knew earlier on in your career?
Um, I would say two things, and they are two things that I'm still trying to grapple with on a day to day. The first one being self-advocacy. I am notorious for letting the work speak for me, and that's just not the case. You don't know who's watching, you don't know who's listening, and you don't know who's going to be able to understand and see the work that you're doing. So you have to speak up. You have to speak up for your work. You have to speak up for yourself, and be your biggest cheerleader. And I wish that was something that I had adopted earlier on in my career versus just letting the work speak for itself. And the second one, it's to not be too precious. You
Mm,
can't be precious with the work. You can't be precious with the creative. And that's in line with a lot of what my peers say in the industry. You just got to get the content out. You just got to put that post up. You just got to share that meme. You got to share that post on Threads or wherever it may be. You just got to get it out there and see what happens. And if you fail terribly, then just fail and learn from it and move forward. But you can't be too precious. And that also, I think, applies to yourself as well. Yes, take yourself seriously, but at the end of the day, you can't apply so much pressure on yourself.
yeah, yeah, for sure. I had this therapist say to me once, and this reminded me of this, but she says, Cassie, you're too serious with yourself and you don't like to fail and it beats you down. She's like, I want you to practice making a mistake, nodding that you made a mistake and moving on. And it's okay. And like being okay with that and sitting in that. And I think that's so incredibly important, especially as professionals, as we get caught up in what if this doesn't work? Or what if I try this and no one likes it and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, it's okay. Most of the time, people will see what you post and they'll maybe watch it for a second and then they're going to move on and they're not going to sit there thinking about how, oh my gosh, this brand did this thing and how crazy was this and tell all of their friends and family about it and no one buys from you anymore. Like that just doesn't happen. So to your point, it's okay. Just go for it and take risks. I think that's such a good reminder.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Yeah. Well, Nye, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for just sharing your story and your strategies with us. But before you go, I have to know, where can everyone follow along with you, but also Uber online as well?
Oh, yes. Follow Uber, at Uber Eats everywhere, um, just to see the work that I'm doing. But to keep up with me personally, hit me up on LinkedIn, Nija J Aziz, and I'm happy to do coffee chats, Zoom, whatever yours. Just, I'm open, always down to talk.
Awesome. I appreciate that so much. And we'll have your channels and Uber's channels linked below. Nye, thank you again so much for being here and can't wait to stay in touch with you and see what you continue to do in your life and career.
Thank you so much. This was a lot of fun.
We are so excited to share that our first ever free marketing happy hour digital resource is now available. Download the Dream Career Game Plan today at marketinghappyhr.com/freebie. That's marketinghappyhr.com/freebie. This 5-step workbook will guide you through defining your goals, building your network, diversifying your skills, influencing where you're at, and investing in your growth. Cassie and I created this resource with marketing careers in mind, but the framework can be applied to any industry. Our hope is that this workbook will help you truly elevate your career, whether you're in the market for a new position or just looking to make your mark in your current organization. No matter where this resource finds you, we are cheering you on every step of the way. So go check it out at marketinghappyhr.com/freebie to download and make your career dreams come true.